Imagine that you arrive at a cake decorating class that I am offering, and I hand you 3 2-inch thick poppy seed cakes that have been wrapped tightly from the day before and stored on the countertop at room temperature overnight. I provide the proper tools: a serrated knife with a thin blade that's very sharp and is longer than the diameter of each cake round, a turntable that allows you to glide the knife back and forth around the edges toward the center so that you get a very even tort. You choose the smaller cake board because you only need 1 inch or 2 extra to finish the decorations, and a damp towel to hold down your cake from sliding on the turntable. You keep track of the layers so that there is an order to your cake building, and you put a toothpick at the back to keep track of it as you build. My kitchen is very cold, so you will notice that the buttercream is brittle and firm, and it cannot just be paddled. It needs to be warmed gently. I used to do this with a well-wrung out hot towel, but that was very time-consuming and it wasn't very efficient. So we will use a torch, and I will teach you to be very careful and gentle so that you don't melt the butter, but that you warm the bowl so that the coldness can be distributed, come in contact with the warm edges, and the entire buttercream softens up, becomes smooth and usable, and is perfect for filling and frosting your cake. This vanilla-flavored Swiss buttercream is perfect for sticking down the first layer. Just a dollop will do, but you must press down and slide the cake around just a little bit so that it creates a little bit of a suction and it holds well. I will give you my favorite tool of all time. It's a 4-inch offset spatula, and it's like an extension of my hand. It allows you to control that soft, beautiful buttercream all the way to the edges of the cake, but not over. And you'll add a little bit more so that that filling layer is about 1/4 inch thick. The next layer is pivotal in getting your cake straight. You want to center it and gently press it down to hold. I will give you some lemon cream that I made to flavor the next layer of filling so that it's similar to the first, thick to hold the weight of the cake, but is imparted with a lovely light lemon flavor. It should also be 1/4 inch thick, and when you place the next layer, you will center it and press it down gently. A farmer's market raspberry jam will be added to a little bit of the buttercream that still has a little lemon cream in it, and that will make the third filling layer, 1/4 inch thick. It's not very well emulsified, but it will be fine. You will straighten out that next layer of cake, press it down, and then add the 4th layer, a thin, straight lemon cream layer. The next cake will be gently placed, and then the final filling is a little bit of raspberry jam. Thin fillings don't do well at the bottom of cakes because the heaviness smushes out these ingredients. That's why we start with a nice buttercream that can support the cake. At this point, you will be given more soft buttercream to put on the top of your cake. From that pile, you will use the 4-inch offset spatula to pull down neatly what you need to press back and forth and into the cake. The buttercream is a spackle of sorts. It's going to fill in the small amount of the edges that you left between the layers and all of the cake pores. It will also fill in the edge between the bottom of the cake plate and the beginning part of your cake. This is a sealant that will not allow air to go in or out. I believe that a well-balanced, even crumb-coated cake is the best way to get started toward a very nice cake because you don't want to do a lot of repair during the final finish. But it doesn't matter what the cake looks like in terms of the cake poking through the frosting. You are looking for the edges to be as straight as possible, and then you begin working on the top. This takes a little bit of practice, but it's almost like landing a plane. You're not shooting for the edge, you're shooting beyond and pulling toward the center, turning the cake and doing the same thing. I have seen a lot of people spray cakes with water, and that is not good advice. A clean, damp towel that has been very well wrung out can be used to wipe your palette knife off between every single swipe. Real buttercream is very forgiving because butter wants to be smooth. Now that the cake has been chilled and it is firm, when you add buttercream to the top, that buttercream is going to begin to firm up quickly. So you have to work as fast and neatly as you can, and your goal is to cover the sides of the cake so that you can't see any cake poking through, and to create very straight sides. There is a strong urge to add a lot of frosting, thinking that you can just scrape it off, but you have to learn control. Add just enough that you can still take some away, and overall, know when to stop. Once the edges are done, then you focus on the top, and you don't really go back and forth unless the top edge is a problem. That's where you'll fill it in and redo the top edge. I mark the back of the cake so that I can begin the border at the back. I find an appropriate star tip for the size and height of my cake, put it into a pastry bag, and I use my scissors to cut around and pull off the end. It's not a myth that pastry chefs put pastry bags in deli cups. It's the best way to add frosting and to scrape off your spatula. Working clean and keeping the buttercream at the end of the bag and holding it properly between your pointer finger and thumb so that nothing comes out the back is very important to reducing hand strain and getting a really nice even pipe. I tend to count when I'm piping, but as you can see, they're not all perfect. On the bottom, I want the shells to go around, so I hold the angle horizontally to the cake, and on the top, I want them to head upward, so I hold them perpendicular. I promise you, if you think the cake isn't perfect, it doesn't matter, because when you're done, no one will notice the mistakes, and you will get a sense of the overall effect that your piping and finished icing has. This cake is not perfect. I had a lot of sugar petals laying around, so I just stuck them in a circular way. I think it's very whimsical. There are the layers and the flavors. And now when you take your fork and eat this cake, every single time you take a bite, you will get a different flavor profile. I seal it up with plastic so it doesn't dry out, and I turn a plastic container that fits well upside down. So the top becomes a cake holder, and then you can transport the cake. As I said at the beginning, you can make this cake in its entirety. And when is the last time you were served one that looked like this and tasted this good?